Some people wonder what the difference is between UX design and UI design. If you're one of those people, wonder no more. Stick around and I'll tell you exactly what the difference is. Let's get started. What's going on? My name is Piet Alberts, that's Pietalberts. It's Dutch and I blame my parents for that name. Anyway, welcome to my channel where I give you weekly tips on design, online marketing and business. And if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button plus the notification icon so you don't miss any new up and coming episodes on this channel. So in this video, I'm going to demystify what the difference is between UX design and UI design. And I hope you're ready because there's going to be a whole bunch of design jargon thrown your way. But if you stick with me right to the end, I promise you, you'll know more than most people out there in the world about what the difference is between UX design and UI design. A good place to start is to look at where design fits into the larger picture. So there are usually three key players that have a major impact on design, and that is number one, business, and number two, design, and number three, engineering. I call these key players the Trinity. So our first key player, which is business, usually consists of, well, business people. And these people have titles such as CEO, or there are some kind of business executive, or business analysts, or product owners and product managers. And they could even be the client. Then our second key player is design. And design may consist of, well, you guessed it, designers. But there are multiple facets of design and different kind of specialty roles, such as a UX researcher, a UX writer or a copywriter, and information architects, and then of course UX designers and UI designers. Then our third key player is engineering, and they consist of people that actually build the stuff that the designers come up with. Engineering are also called coders or programmers or developers, and they usually consist of people that are highly technical and have titles such as CTO or a lead developer or a back-end developer or a front-end developer. So let's take a quick look at the relationship between business design and engineering. Usually business would approach design and engineering with some kind of business problem that they want to get solved. And this could be maybe designing a new app, or designing a new feature for an existing piece of software, or designing a whole new website. So it is then design's job to figure out what the right thing to build is, and then to build that thing right. I hope that makes sense. And once a design solution has been created and validated and we think it's the right solution, it's then time for the engineering team to take over and build out that solution. Although I've described a very linear process between business, design, and engineering, this process is usually much more collaborative, and so it should be. Real design happens when there's real collaboration between business, design, and engineering. All the stakeholders should be involved all the time from end to end to get the best product. Okay, back to the difference between a UX designer and a UI designer. So the first thing you should know is that the UX in UX design stands for user experience, and the UI in UI design stands for user interface. And it's interesting to note that in both of those terms, you'll find the words user and design. That just gives you a clue that both of these roles have a very common goal, and that is to meet business objectives and to look after the needs of the user. So what do UX designers do? Well, they make sure that they design the right product for the business and the right product for the user. UX designers draw from psychology and research and a whole host of other design techniques to make sure that they design the right product that meets the business objectives and that meets the user's needs. User experience designers usually get involved with doing quite a bit of research upfront, and that is to figure out what users want and to find out what the actual problems are that need to be solved. Then they might get involved with doing competitor research or competitor analysis, which is all about finding out what the competitive landscape looks like. Once they understand the problem and the competitive landscape, they might start designing personas, and personas are basically a representation of a user. Once the personas are done, user experience designers might get involved with doing user journey maps or customer journey maps, and that is just another tool to understand what the user wants and what kind of functionality or features might address the needs of users. So once a user experience designer has defined the journey with the information architecture and the user journey maps and task flows and so forth, then it's time to get involved with doing wireframes or prototyping the solution. And that's all about basically designing the screens and designing the user flows. During the wireframing and prototyping process, a user experience designer might do user testing as frequently as possible to make sure that they're on the right path to design the right product. So what are some of the tools that user experience designers use? And when I talk about tools, I mean the software. So something that they might use regularly is something called Balsamiq, which is meant to do low fidelity wireframing and just to be able to explain concepts on a very, very basic level. And then they might go into using something like Azure or UXPin to build high fidelity prototypes. Then furthermore, they could use applications such as Adobe XD or Sketch or Figma to really design high fidelity prototypes and to create clickable prototypes. So now that we have a bit of a background on what a UX designer does, let's look at the traits or the qualities a UX designer should typically have. I forgot the qualities. What was that again? In my opinion, the first quality a UX designer should have is empathy. Because without empathy, you won't be able to walk a mile in somebody else's shoes and see something from someone else's point of view. The second quality a UX designer should have is pretty good cognitive abilities, because we have to process a lot of information and we have to make sense of it, and it's quite a mental process to look at all the research information and try and sort them and to make sense of it all. The third quality of a UX designer is to be curious, because curiosity never killed the cat. In my opinion, curiosity is essential when you're a UX designer, because you want to understand what motivates people, what drives them, and why do they make certain decisions. So being curious is definitely a quality a UX designer should have. The fourth quality I think a UX designer should have is to be creative. Our industry is intrinsically creative, because we have to come up with solutions, we have to think about ideas, and we have to solve problems all the time. And the next quality I think is really important is to have pretty good analytical abilities. UX design requires you to be analytical about everything, about why you make certain design decisions and about why a user might be doing a particular thing. So it's really important to have some kind of analytical ability and to be able to combine that with creativity as well. And the next quality I think is really important is for a UX designer to be quite scientific in their approach to design. Design doesn't just happen in some creative vacuum. It's a very analytical process and you have to approach it quite scientifically to get the results that you want. Next up, let's take a look at UI design. So what is a UI designer responsible for? Ultimately, a UI designer is concerned with the visual design of a product. They provide that layer that enables humans to interact with technology. The first thing a UI designer is responsible for is the visual design of a product. That means looking at what the layout looks like, using color and typography and iconography to create a design that is compliant with brand and that fulfills marketing objectives and also fulfills the user objectives. The second thing a UI designer might be responsible for, although this is very much in collaboration with a UX designer, is the usability of a product. That means using the right kind of patterns and components and to look at the accessibility, the overall accessibility of the product to ensure that people who have any kind of disabilities can use the product as well, and to, in general, just make it more usable. The third thing a UI designer might be responsible for is the interaction design of the product. Now this is usually done in collaboration with a UX designer and maybe also the engineering team. The interaction design is all about the system behavior, how it behaves, and also the environment that people use the product in, and then also the input devices that people use to use the product. Another thing that UI designers are responsible for is documenting the design. Now, documenting the UI design is important for a couple of reasons. Number one, it helps everyone in the organization to use the design essence consistently. And number two, it helps engineers to have a very good specification with which they can build the product. Documenting the UI design can be done in various ways. You can use a design system, or a style guide, or a pattern library. What you'll use will depend entirely on the circumstances and the type of product that you're working on, and maybe the type of organization that you are working in. So the first quality of a UI designer is to have, you guessed it, very good visual design capabilities. And that means having a good grasp on design principles and how to use color, shape, size, form, and layout just to create beautiful designs and striking designs to evoke emotions. So then the next quality that a UI designer has to have is to be meticulous. UI design is very detail orientated. Everything is important down to the last pixel, and therefore you have to be very, very detail orientated. And the third quality is to be creative. Creativity is intrinsic in our industry. Design, it just goes along with the territory. And the fourth quality a UI designer should have is the ability to evoke some emotion with the design that they create. So that could be using color and typography and shape and size and layout, using animation and sound. All those kind of things should work together to evoke some kind of emotional response. The next quality I think a UI designer should have is to be able to apply systems thinking. And the reason why I say system thinking is important is because the product that the designer is designing must be built by engineers, and engineers need a lot of specifications, and the more systematic a design can be, the better it is for engineers to build as well. So that's quite important. Then the next thing a UI designer should have is also empathy, and that's the ability just to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and think about the problem and the experience from someone else's point of view. But now you can see that UX and UI design are two very different roles, but you can also see that they are very interdependent. In a well-functioning design team, you should find business people and design people and engineering people sitting around the same table, collaborating and working together towards the best product that they can design. And that about wraps up this video. I hope you found some value in this, and I hope you have a clearer understanding of what the difference is between a UX designer and a UI designer. And if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button and hit the notification icon so that you can be reminded of any up and coming videos that I release. And I hope to see you next time. Cheers!